Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of PAR Real Talk. And as usual, my name is Pali. I'll be the host of the show, and I have an incredible guest on the show. An amazing guest. There's a lot to learn today. If I can get my guest, if I can get you to please introduce yourself, tell us your name, tell us where you're from, and a brief summary of what you do, please.
Okay, well, I'm Brian Christopher Murphy. I live in Vicksburg, Mississippi in the USA. I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana in the USA. That's in the Midwest. Down here in the deep South, where the land down yonder. Wasn't born in the South, but got here as quick as I could. I'm a graduate of the U.S. Army Quartermaster School at Fort Lee, Virginia. My background is mainly supply chain logistics. I went on from there. I did 7 years in the military. And like I say, primarily supply chain, transportation, logistics is what I've done most of my career. The last 15 years, I've been a real estate investor and landlord. Also some business investment. And so primarily what I do today, I'm director and CEO of Construction Brokers, which is a construction supply firm, supply chain logistics and management. And then I'm also the chairman of Quip Holdings, which is a holding company. And I'm also the chairman of Quilt Advisory Group, which we're a group of advisors, whatever you need help with personally, business. You tell me what you need, when, and where, and I will make it happen.
Perfect. That's a lot of hats you wear there.
There's a lot of hats to wear, but I try to wear them well. And I think probably the key thing I bring is, one of the nicest compliments I was ever paid someone was, they said, I always feel better after having talked to you. You make me feel good about myself. So I kind of feel like that's my superpower, because my belief is in unity, just like Power Radio. But the way I see it, it's you and I, T-by. You and I together as one, working to make the world a better place. And I think that's why we make a good fit for each other, because we have that unity message, unity through music through cooperation. The word team, people say there's no I in team. Yes, there is. Look in the word team in big block letters, T-E-A-M. See the I? You see it? It's right there in the A. There's the I in team. And what are the last two letters in team? Am. Who's a member of this team? I am. And you are, and we all are. And together with unity, we create synergy. And when synergy happens, anything's possible.
That is really, really cool. I like the way you
my company's main page, www.cbimes.com on the web. You can read my main message to anybody that comes to my company, whatever they need. When anyone, a customer, a client, an employee comes to me, my first question is, how can I help? Because I'm not a boss, I'm a leader. I show people the way. I empower people. You can do anything you want to, literally. But you have to apply yourself. You have to learn first. And that's where, as a CEO, I spend the bulk of my time right here in my home office, doing what I'm doing right now on the computer, talking to people, advising them. When I'm not doing that, I'm looking things up. I'm learning. I am constantly in learning mode, because that's what a leader does. They keep learning. Want to be in better shape than the people you want to help, you got to learn how. And whether you go online, teach yourself, there's self-help books. Everything you could ever possibly want is now readily available today, thanks to the Oracle, the internet, which we together using synergy have created. You and I together, working as one, are creating this podcast. You know, we all do that through every single thing we do, every single day, every minute, every interaction with another is either going to make it better or just you got to work on it a bit more. But you don't ever make mistakes. You gain experience. That's how we learn. Experience is our biggest teacher. School just teaches you the basics. If all you've had is grade school and college, well, you've gotten the book smarts. Now get out there and get the experience, because it's not the destination, it's the journey. Eventually, our lives come to an end. We've only got so much time. You know, it's what you make of that time. Really, success in life, a lot of it, it's 10% what happens and 90% how you respond to it. You know, many people take things personally. Why? They don't know you. How could it be personal? If there's somebody on the street or even someone you casually know, you really don't know them. Because be honest, we do not show everyone everything, especially anything that we think might diminish them in the eyes or diminish ourselves in the eyes of others. What we want is love, acceptance, validation, and approval. And the only things we need are food, water, shelter, air. And we're good. We need those for survival, love, acceptance, validation, and approval. And we can do that through unity, creating synergy, make the world a better place. And look at what we've done with it. Look at where we were 50 years ago, 100 years ago. What we've accomplished in just in the last 20 years with the internet. At 57, I look at a world that is radically different from what I grew up in. I grew up in the 60s and 70s in the USA. Well, you're surprised I didn't say America? Yeah, we only do that on occasion. You know, we do that to entertain the masses, you know, kind of like y'all. We don't really say that all that much, occasionally. And it's closer to the King's English than it is to American English because of contraction of ye all, not you all. It's Old English. Traces back to our days back on the other side of the pond. You know, before we decide to make
sorry, I just kind of want to pick up on something you said previously, just to elaborate on that bit where you said you're not a boss, you're a leader. Could you give an insight into the difference between them? Because a lot of people think, yeah, it's my company, I run the show. Which
no,
both leader and
this company is our livelihood, and it helps with the livelihoods of all of our customers. You know, and employees are also customers. It's a two-way interaction. You know, here we say in Mississippi, well, this is a right to work state. You have the right to work. You know, I have the right to employ you, pay you a fair wage, create a work environment you can be happy in, because there's nothing worse than going to work in a job where you don't feel appreciated, not paid well. I look at it as, if you're working for this company, that means out of all the people we could have selected, we chose you because we see you, of all the people that have applied or that we could find or recruit, you're the best. Now show us what you got. That's your time to shine. The key difference between a boss and a leader, you know, a leader leads by example, and they know how to delegate to others. Trust them to do the jobs you're paying them to do. Are you really going to hire people and then do the job for them? And then want to complain because you got to pay them more than minimum wage? Well, and minimum, nobody in the US anyway pays minimum wage, because no one would work for that. $7.35 an hour? Really? Come on now. But a leader understands. You know, leaders are human, you know, and we have HR departments to help us. And ultimately, we know how to find and attract talent. We found you, and you came here, and you stayed. You know, many people have been here for years and say they will never work anywhere else. You know, and that makes me feel good. That makes me feel how I'm doing my job as a leader, not a boss. Managers get paid to be bosses, to make sure everybody does their job, that we're all working in sync. My job is to steer ultimately, or to create, to decide, okay, where are we going? How are we going to get there? Where are we now? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And what can we find along the way? You know, 'cause again, it's about the destination, or I'm sorry, the journey, not the destination so much. So what kind of fun can we have along the way? Because there's so much to see and do. And it's, you want to get out of the rat race? Quit running. It's not a race, it's a marathon. And what are you competing for? There's plenty. You know, while supplies last, let me tell you, somebody in supply chain logistics, they last. And if they don't, they replace it with somebody else or something else, something better, because they're always coming out with new and improved. But I think, you know, being an older, not that that necessarily means anything in and of itself, but being experienced, wiser. I've learned what I want in life and what I don't. And I think most of us, by the time we hit around 40 or so, maybe having a midlife crisis. Well, is it really a crisis? No, you're just looking back over your life. You know, it's been how many years since the last time you reviewed? Okay, so it's just kind of a midlife review. Am I on track to where I want to go? And as far as retirement goes, you know, I retired at 45. Why? How do I manage that? Oh my God, do I have millions? No. No, I'm not a millionaire. I'm more like Warren Buffett. I know how to make money when I need it. I know how to teach other people to make money when they need it. If you really just have 2 or 3 years, you know, enough for 2 or 3 years to pay all your bills, well, then you're good. They go, well, how am I going to make it to retirement? Well, you start learning investing. And then one of the first things, one of the earliest books I read, because much of a study is not in the classroom. And one of the earliest books I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Massive eye opener, sorry. And, you know, it's how I started to learn about money and finance and how we pay so much in taxes. Are they supposed to have any money left over when you're taxed on everything?
Yeah.
You know, but then, well, you get it all back at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, I want the money now. So typically when I do like pay my taxes, and yes, CEOs do, but being smart, we're not going to pay any more than we have to. Profits have to stay in the company, and it's not greed. I'm taking care of you. This company needs the money to do that. Pay the benefits, because we don't have socialized medicine in the USA. You know, it's either employer sponsored or you pay for it. And if you can't afford it, well, they'll take it out of your tax return because now it's required. You know, we're the only country in the world that I think has ever required its citizens to buy a product from a third party. You know, it's like, really? And the thing was, they rushed it through and then signed it without even reading it because it was like this many miles high. You know, what legislator does that and stays in office? Yeah, just vote for this. We'll tell you what's in it later. And they did. Every one of them said, no, until I've had a chance to read it, I'm not signing this. This affects the entire country. And this is your idea of socialized medicine? No. You put it, well, you know, they kick it down and they say, well, we don't have anything to replace it with. Well, then you put it back the way it was. It wasn't the greatest, but it worked. It was the best we had. We had most of the country covered. You know, and we have programs for people who can't afford insurance. That's what Medicaid is for. It's a government program that will pay for the insurance if you can't afford it. If you can, well, then it should be okay, but they jacked the price up so high. If you can afford the premiums, well, then you can't afford to pay the deductible, which you have to pay. That's why the idea of an ambulance scares us to death. It's like, no, it's okay. I'll walk. I'll somehow manage to keep this second chest wound at bay because I can't afford that.
So is this what kind of got you into strategic planning? Just looking at the world and looking at how things are and really wanted to help people. Is that what shifted you into strategic planning?
I think the strategic planning was primarily, I mean, that's part of being a leader. You have to look ahead, but you also don't want to get ahead of yourself. So it tends to be, I tend to take a one day at a time, one thing at a time approach as far as seeing what's happening. Because so many people, they make plans, but they make backup plans. They make up backup plans for what can go wrong, not what can go right. What if your plans work out perfectly and it goes exactly the way you thought it was going to go? You got an effective leader, and it's not just me. There's other managers and other people in the company that can help you. And if they can't, I'll find you somebody who can. We're a network of advisors, not just a handful of people. It's this company, other companies, other people. You can advise. We all know something that we can share with others, at any age, even if all you have is a few years, well, you know how to do something, do that, especially if you love it and you're good at it. And don't worry so much about the monetization, because if you believe in karma, it's going to come back eventually. It's just part of everyone talks about law of attraction. Well, that's part of it, because you attract what you send out. You have to be the person you want to see in others.
Well,
Then you'll attract them. But the thing with law of attraction, attract, don't chase. Don't go out after everything. Bring it to you, because everything you want is actually already here. You just got to go out there and find it and get it. And you can find anything you want. We've got homes all over the world. Airbnb. Anything you need or want is right there at your fingertips. Your phone. That's what we did using synergy through good leadership, working together, you and I and everyone together, all the other eyes and team have made all this happen. I spent the bulk of my life was pre-internet. I didn't know really the internet until 95. And I remember pre-internet, if you didn't know DOS, you couldn't work with the computer. If you didn't know how to type, it was going to take you all day.
And how do you kind of so for you as a CEO, obviously there are a lot of projects, there are a lot of people to deal with. How do you prioritize that, to make sure actually you're delivering the right thing at the right time?
I have a brilliant team of people who know how to handle all that, because part of being a business owner is you have to be able to walk away from it. If you can't stand back and let the company run itself for a little while, you don't own a company, you own a job. If it can't work without you, because you're ultimately the key one, the decision maker. Others can make decisions, but they're not legally in positions within the company to do that. They're not authorized, because there are a lot of laws and regulations as to who can do what, who's authorized to do what, because mishaps on the parts of other people, that can get you into big time regulatory trouble, because we're regulated to death in this country. Between the taxes and the regulation, it's hard to have any money. That's why we want to come live in the UK.
Yeah, where you're coming from there, it's kind of the same here in the UK. But I think for me, it's more so you delegate and say, okay, these are the people I want to work with. This is how I want to, but you let other people do it. But how you just let go how are you sure they actually following you? You know your dream, you know where you're going, you know why you created the business, you know where you want to go. How do you get them to be on the same wavelength as you, without actually checking off on them and technically micromanaging them? How do you just give them that free will? Like, okay, this is what we need to achieve. Go and achieve it.
Right. Well, one, if you're working here, you're qualified to work here. If you're an engineer, whatever your job is, you're obviously qualified to do it. And you must know you're qualified because you wouldn't be applying, and you wouldn't be applying here, unless you believed you could do it. So right off the bat, there's a degree of trust, because you wouldn't apply again if you didn't know what you were doing. And we've checked your background, we verified schooling and everything needed to know. So yeah, I don't need it. If I have to macromanage you, well, something's wrong. You should be able to manage yourself. I mean, that's all part of doing the job you're expected to do by me, by your coworkers, your managers, your supervisors. We're all working together. So if you need help, don't be afraid to ask. And if you feel like you're in an environment where you don't feel safe speaking up, or especially not defending yourself, I want to know about it, because it shouldn't be that way. You should be able to speak freely, communicate openly, because we can't get the job done if we can't communicate effectively. As far as micromanaging, I do that to myself to make sure I don't do or say the wrong thing. Because if you have to, you can try to be helpful, like say, I'm not that busy, and I'll come in and I'll help. Well, some people feel like, well, what? Don't you think I'm doing the job good enough? Don't you think I can do my job? It's like, yes, I know you can, but I can help. But again, you have to be careful of that. Like I remember one time I was in a meeting with an employee, a couple of employees, we were just discussing some things that needed to be done. It wasn't disciplinary by any means. And a knock came at the door. I got up and I got it. And I said, okay, sorry about that. I sat back down. They were, oh, we're surprised you got up and did it yourself. What? Because I'm the CEO of the company, everything's got to be done for me? No, it's mine. It's ours, actually. And in truth, as far as the profit-driven part of it, that's to keep the company afloat. I want this company to continue to give us livelihoods for as many generations as we can have. I want to see construction brokers or whatever companies I have with the established, 2010, and it's now 3127. Now, that means I built something that has lasted and kept people, having good jobs for generations to come. It's very rare for companies to last that long without a good synergistic team. And it takes everybody working together.
And I just want to go back into sort of like your military background. I had a little short bit in the military as well, where so for us, you get your orders, and you know what the end goal is. This is what we're overall trying to achieve. Now it's down to you to break down what you have, what logistics you have, what manpower you have, what you need, and but this is what I've heard. So maybe you can correct that myth that in the US military, they kind of tell you everything you need to do up to the last minute. You have to stand there at this time and you have to mobilize at this time. You have to use this particular thing. Is that true? And did you bring that and think, okay, this is not how I want to do it. I want to give people the chance to be able to actually, let's hear what you have to say. Give us your idea. That's why you're here in the job.
Right. But the way the military differs, it's more, there's much tougher command structure. You don't really have that much leeway to think and decide, because when you're, a military organization, your main job is national defense. So you have to be able to work cohesively. So you can't really have people making their own decisions. You have to make sure your decisions are being carried out, because if what you say does not reach the frontline troops properly. Like we say, put people in a circle and you whisper the one something, and then by the time it comes back around, it's something totally different.
Yeah.
Well, we
Yes.
can't have that in the military. What the commanders say is what the troops have to hear. Otherwise, if they're saying, call them that way, and they're going that way, well, we just gave the enemy an advantage.
Mm.
And my primary thing in the military, being supply chain logistics, we have to keep our supply chains, because people at the front can't do anything if they can't get anything from the back. So there's a lot more tactical involved, and I think that plays over into strategic planning with business. Keeping your supply chains protected, because those are most vital elements. Because otherwise, everybody's empty-handed. With the military, you got to be here at a certain time. Just all the constant orders. Well, for the most part, it's a 9 to 5 job. Be here at this time. Be there at this time. The workday is typically 8 to 4:30. You get an hour for lunch. All the drills and the formations and all that teaches you discipline. That's something everyone says that you get from military service. You learn discipline, that having to be there at certain times, that having to do things, whether you like them or not. That's where discipline comes from. It's the ability to do things, even though you don't want to do them and you hate them. But once it's over and it's done right and it's done well, we don't have to worry about it anymore. And do it right and well, because if you don't, you're going to be doing it again.
This is it, absolutely.
And
And
insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
absolutely, I like that saying a lot.
Again,
One of
you
my managers say that a
learn
lot.
to go play. There's a lot of fun. I had a blast in the military.
Mm.
Actually, well, it was back in the 90s, but I was in London. The military made that possible, because I was stationed in Germany and then Italy. I was in Europe for 3.5 years. So I've been to about 14 different countries there. Been to London, been to England, been to Ireland, been to Belgium, most of the Western European countries, because compared to the USA, it's so much smaller. I mean, you can go from London to Munich in, I think, 12 hours. Well, here in 12 hours, it would take me 12 hours to drive from like here to Chicago, and that's why we don't really travel a whole lot abroad, because we've got so much here.
Mm.
And people from all over the world have come here to make America what it is. That wasn't just us. That was all of us working together. Yeah, we're having a lot of problems here right now, but most of the world is. I think I really attribute a lot of that. It's to the magnetic shift of poles. Well, if it can affect the tides, it'll affect us, because we're 70% resonant water. So all this upset is because the poles are shifting. Happens about every 2,500 years. When it does, that's when you'll see a lot of upheaval, but good usually comes out of it. That's what the Renaissance came from. It was a pole shift. But prior to that, it was I think they call it the Dark Ages. Then it became the Age of Enlightenment, and I think that's where we are now with the magnetic pole shifting. It's a new Age of Enlightenment. We're waking up. We're not woke. We're waking up. Woke is actually past tense. You were woke. Well, then you were already awake then. We're kind of half asleep at the wheel. But no, you're awake if you're aware. But awareness doesn't necessarily mean consciousness. You also need to be consciously aware. So be careful. Just like I say, one day at a time, one thing at a time. Don't try to take on the entire world. Take care of you, because you got to be in better shape than the people you want to help. That's where self-care comes in, and that too is part of a leadership. What a leader does.
That's great that you kind of went into that about self-care, because what I kind of wanted to ask is, obviously, being a CEO and wearing all these different hats, you're constantly busy, constantly doing this, doing that. Where do you get the time for yourself? And when you do, what do you do in your spare time that's not work related?
They're not really separated. You know, my personal time, my professional time, they're really more one because that's part of time management. I mean, when you're at the top, there's no days off. There's no scheduled really. I mean, 9 to 5, but when you're at the top, you're working around the clock because the commerce doesn't stop. You know, the business doesn't stop. You know, everybody may be at home, but they're going to be back again. You know, and that's where you got to have the time to really think and plan, strategize, and think, okay, where are you going next? Because they're focusing on what's happening today, now, but you got to be thinking ahead, but not super far ahead. You know, just far enough ahead you can hopefully see what's coming. But again, with supply chain, and that's my background, I can almost look into the future and tell you what's coming by what's happening today in supply chain. Are we well stocked? Are we not? Because if we're not and demand's coming, we're not going to have enough. Because the other side of the supply chain is demand chain. And so many companies don't look at the demand side, only the supply. You know, what's demand side saying? Because, you know, when they get out of balance, and that's what we're having so many economic problems, you can't shut supply chains down and then think you're just going to start them back up again. It requires a lot of time. And we were shut down for so long, people went and found other jobs. They had to. Not everybody got COVID unemployment. You know, not everybody got any kind of funding. You know, some people had to find something else. And we see that in our stores. They've all gone self-checkout now. I don't know how it is in the UK. Are you seeing a lot of self-checkout?
Well, technology is taking over everything.
All there is. You know, but and then other stores still have, you know, they've got all their cashiers. There's no self-checkout. But the ones that do, can't just put it back the way it was, because most people take 20 minutes and help from a cashier to ring up 2 items. It was faster before. We get in and out, so it was worth paying them a little more. You know, now they don't have anybody because they all went and found something else. And the teenagers all know how to go on, make TikToks and do all kinds of stuff they're all online now. You know, the young ones, now they're in the digital age now. We're still back in the info age trying to figure out how the stuff works, because that's not what we grew up with. Oh, if we brought back cursive, landline phones, and manual transmissions, we don't know what to do.
Absolutely. And there was a saying that somebody said that you don't raise your kid the same way your parents raised you, because that time when they raised you, that's gone. This is now the new age. So let's say now looking into because time is wrapping up. So let's look at the new age people. If they're like somebody like me, or even the ones that are younger, you know, just starting a business, what is that one piece of advice that you give somebody who is starting off to go, if you want to be successful, this you must do, regardless of what your business is?
Well, first, if you want a business, I advise you to buy one, not build one, because it's a lot easier. It's like houses. Now, why would you want to build one when you can buy one already built to your specs that somebody else already built, because their vision was the same as yours? You just make little changes. Starting a business is the hard way to do it, but it is a great way to learn. But start small. You know, start out with small gigs, side hustles, just to kind of get a feel. But ultimately, you know, main thing is reading constantly. Before you go out there and start a business, learn what's involved. One, why are you going? What do you want the money for first? If you're only doing it for the money, well, you put the cart before the horse. What's your end game? My end game in business is I've made my money. Now I want to help you make money. And that's where the advisory group comes in, helping you get what you want. And like I said, the first thing I'd ask you is, how can I help? And so my advice to, learn first before you start a business. Learn all your options. Learn how to start a business with no money down. There's options I can tell you about right now that you can get out there and make all kinds of money, don't need credit, don't need startup funding, and yet can make a mint. But you got to figure out, what do you want first in terms of house, car, clothes? Just what do you need to live comfortably? Reasonably, you don't need a whole lot. You need a roof over your head, food on the table, transportation, medical care. When you have all that, now it's just a matter of want. There's nothing worse than financial stress making you constantly on edge. Live within your means and be comfortable and able to pay your bills. Because if you're constantly worried about money, you're going to be distracted. Get yourself, let's stay with the job until you get the business built to where it makes the money. You can then switch over. That's what I did in real estate. Before I left my job, I made sure I had enough money coming in first, because real estate has made more millionaires than anything else. It's safe.
Power Ace Radio.